And then once you see the
Hey,
live on
Whit.
Facebook, you can go ahead and get started.
All right.
All right, here we go.
Are we on?
There you
Don't
go.
see it yet.
Yep.
Oh, we're on. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Expert with Martin Eiden and the Martin Eiden team. Today, we have our expert attorney, real estate attorney, Gary Katz in the house to tell us about what's happening. And again, this month of May is buyer month. So learn everything about buyers. So Gary is one of our go-to attorneys. We use him on all of our deals. The complicated ones, we, wink, wink, we like to throw them a few easy deals once in a while, if there are any easy deals in this market. But Gary, tell us a little bit, kind of a little refresher about yourself, how long you've been in the business, and then kind of what you're seeing in the market today.
Thank you, Martin, for that nice introduction. Yes, I have been doing real estate transactions now for about 14 years. I started in litigation and I decided I got tired of fighting with people every day. And so I made the transition into real estate. And now I find myself fighting with people every day anyway. But no, it's basically, it is a specialty. It is not the sexiest area of law. They're not going to make, Law and Order real estate division anytime soon. If they do, I got some good cases for it.
Right.
But you do need to have an attorney who knows what they're doing. You do need to know that you're in good hands. I mean, for most people, buying is the biggest or second biggest investment of their life. They really need to know that they're in good hands, and they need to know that their interests are being protected, especially as a buyer. And, I hear often, oh, well, my parents bought in California and they didn't need an attorney, or my parents bought somewhere else and they didn't use an attorney. The truth is that you probably could stumble your way through it, but why take that chance? It is such a big investment. Why would you even try to represent yourself on something you don't know and you don't understand? You wouldn't try to do surgery on yourself if you needed to see a doctor. Why would you try to do a complicated transaction without an attorney? And what makes New York a little bit different is that we are mostly co-ops and condominiums, whereas your parents buying a house in California, they bought a house. They didn't have to deal with house rules. They didn't have to deal with doing due diligence and learning about the building's financials and litigation history and open building permits and temporary certificate of occupancies. So there's a lot more complexity when buying in New York. As far as the market goes, I was on I was on your podcast or whatever, Facebook chat
Right.
last summer, and I had a pessimistic view of the real estate market during the pandemic. However, I was proven wrong. I'm happy I was proven wrong. And right now, deals just keep coming in. A lot of people ask me, oh, does that mean everybody's fleeing New York? Well, maybe, but for every seller, there's a buyer. So there are some people staying, moving, upgrading, or coming to New York for the first time. So yeah, it's an interesting time in the market.
Yeah, fair enough. And you brought up a bunch of great points there, Gary. So I wanted to go back to a few of them. So number one, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut is an attorney state, right? And that is, we've always said that you need to have an attorney. And I think you said, technically, if you really want to push it, you don't have to have one. But in this market, if you do not have an attorney representing you, most likely the seller is going to go with somebody else if you're a buyer. Or vice versa, because it is, in my 22 years, I've never had a deal where there was not an attorney representing one party or the other.
In my 14 years, I've had two deals where there have been people representing themselves.
Interesting. Very very remote. And just a little bit on that, which I also wanted to touch base on is if you say, well, my brother is a litigation attorney, or my brother, is a business attorney and said he could do a residential real estate transaction. Can you talk a little bit about the subsect of that? There really are a niche group of attorneys that do, pretty much exclusively residential real estate, and why that's important.
Well, I would make the analogy of, of when you go out to eat dinner. You know, I love going to the diner. You could get breakfast any time of day. You could get, cheese fries with gravy, whatever. But when you're doing something once or twice in a lifetime, when you want that really special meal, you're going to go to a specialty place, whether it be steak, seafood, French, whatever. You're going to go to a high-end place when you're doing a once in a lifetime transaction. And I make that analogy, and it's the same kind of thing. There are, just like in any other walk of life, whether it be, again, the medical profession or the legal profession, people specialize, and people specialize for a reason. Yes, your dad's golf buddy who's a tax attorney could probably do a real estate transaction, but, I'll give you a perfect example without getting too, too complex. I basically just got a contract from a personal injury attorney, and it was a standard form contract, and he filled it out wrong first, and he didn't add a rider. And without getting into too much detail, a rider is just additional provisions to the contract that gives your client extra protection. And for the most part, every real estate attorney has a similar rider, just phrased differently because we all like to think our phrasing is better. But when you don't see it, you're based as a seller, you're surrendering, not, I wouldn't say you're surrendering rights, but your attorney's not representing you as well as he should.
Got it. Right. And I've noticed that as well, that once in a while I came across, buyers where, and again, I have a house upstate myself, so I don't want to make it sound like New York City and the rest of the state, but somebody that's not familiar with New York condos, which are unique compared to condos everywhere else and co-ops. If you get information that you're not used to, and people err on the side of caution, they will tell their buyers not to buy something. Whereas it's not that it's a bad property, it's just that they were not familiar with the nuances of it, and that it's standard. So an example is every building in New York City has problems. You're not going to get a problem-free building. And odds are every building was sued at one point or another over something. So, so that's called buying in New York. The other thing is, and you mentioned high end, which I kind of wanted to go back to, most residential real estate attorneys I deal with offer a flat fee. And it's quite reasonable compared to the overall purchase price. Is that your general finding too, Gary?
Correct. Real estate attorneys who know what they're doing, who have been in the industry, charge a flat fee. And, I always tell people the reason for the flat fee is I want you to feel comfortable with the transaction. I don't want there to be any surprises. I want you to know exactly what to expect at closing. And most importantly, I want you to feel free to call me. I don't want you worried about watching the clock every time we talk. I don't want you worried that I'm going to bill you if you send me an email at 9:00 at night. It's not going to be overtime if you send me an email late at night. So that's why I charge a flat fee. If you would encounter an attorney who does not charge a flat fee for a real estate transaction, it's one of three things. Either they're taking advantage of you, they don't know what they're doing, or I guess there's only two things. Either they're taking advantage of you or they don't know what they're doing. But yes, a long time ago, it was actually 1% of the purchase price was a flat fee.
Interesting.
That was a long time ago.
It's significantly less now.
That was when houses were being sold for, $40,000.
Got it.
It's a little bit different now, yes.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, great. And then kind of in our earlier, just to kind of catch you up, the earlier episodes we had is we had a really nice roundtable with Alex McCubbin, with Prouty on tips for buyers to go out and look at stuff. And then we had last week a mortgage broker. Now we have you, Gary. So what are the tips? One of the tips that we said was buyers should reach out to an attorney before they find a property or before they have an accepted offer. Why would you want to do that? Or what's the advantages of trying to find an attorney before you buy?
Well, first of all, it shows that you're serious. It shows that you're ready to go. It will tell your real estate agent, hey, look, I'm ready to go. Once we get the accepted offer, we can move quickly. I think that's a big step for that. And the other thing is you get to ask questions that you may be concerned about. I know a lot of people, they come in and they don't know that there's a mansion tax over $1 million. They don't know that there may be if you're buying new construction, you can negotiate that the sponsor pays the New York City transfer tax. Things like that. You know, you can ask a few questions before you make your final offer and submit everything. You know, depending on how busy the attorney is, maybe they'll even do a little due diligence for you up front, check out the building, check out the apartment. But yeah, that's really why I would recommend going before you have your accepted offer.
Okay, that makes sense. And now quickly, and then we'll go into kind of what are the nuances of this market. The reason why buyers hire an attorney, and I always, and please correct me if I miss something or have something wrong. I always say there's basically 4 things. Number one, you make sure the contract is under the terms and conditions that the deal was agreed upon between the brokers in writing through email. But you make sure the contract is according to the deal. Number 2, you know, the documents for co-ops and condos here in New York are called an offering plan. So you look through that to make sure that is consistent with the building. Very important for new construction, maybe less so for older buildings, but I'll defer to you on that in a second, Gary. Number 3 is you're going to look at the building financials, right? Look at the last years of the financials of the building. If there were problems, and again, this is New York, a lot of buildings had unforeseen expenses, making sure how that was fixed, that type of thing. And then finally, I always think that the most interesting one, although some people say now the meeting minutes are highly sanitized, are the meeting minutes that you asked to see over the last couple of years. And there you get the nitty gritty of, you know, is the next door neighbor a chronic smoker that refuses to close her door during it? Those cooking smells come in from the restaurant on the ground floor. You kind of get a scoop and feel of the building of what's going on. Is that kind of the summary, Gary, or is there extra things, or do you want to elaborate on anything?
That's a very good summary. You are, you know, just taking each one at a time. Yes, there's a lot in the offering plan, and the offering plan is far more important in new construction or recent construction than it is in an older building. However, there are certain things you want to look for in the older buildings. One of the big things I'm always on the lookout for is lot line windows. Because if you have a lot line window and the property next door is going to be developed or improved upon, you could lose that window, whether it be a kitchen window or a bedroom window. The second one, the financials, is also very important, especially now in the pandemic world. You want to see if there are, you know, if there are residents in more than 60 days in arrears and they're risking foreclosures. You want to see if there's commercial space, if the commercial space has been forced out or forced to close, or if they're up to date on their payments. As far as what was number 3, the minutes.
Yeah, the minutes. Oh, I just wanted to go back to financials for just 1 second. Sure. You know, the financials of building do not read like income expense statement that you may have if you have a business or trying to balance your checkbook. They read very differently. And that's also why I think you need to have a real estate attorney look at it. Do you want to touch base on that a little bit, or?
I mean, pretty much without showing a financial statement on, you know, on camera, it's kind of hard to explain, but yes, it's a complicated form that, you know, you can read the nuances. You know, some are prepared better than others, and but yes, it is more than just you looking at a balance statement when you're dealing with the bigger buildings.
Fair enough. And then the third thing, well, the one that we talked about was the meeting minutes. So do you want to comment, do a follow-up comment on that?
Yes. You know, I don't like to set clients' expectations very high anymore when it comes to reading the minutes. Boards become much more savvy and much smarter about what they put in the minutes. So you don't, some buildings you will see very detailed, very thorough, very organized minutes. And if there are complaints, like you mentioned, it will say shareholder of apartment 4M complained about shareholder of apartment 5M stomping on the floor and waking them up, or smoke, or whatever the case may be. Other buildings are less thorough and less organized and may just say shareholder complained about noise in the hallway. Others may not even mention it at all. So really it is, it does, but then you also have what you reading between the lines, and you see which buildings are well run, which buildings are well organized versus which ones are more lax and less detailed and less concerned about how they're governed. So reading the minutes, the nice part is that most places will allow you some kind of digital, virtual, remote reading of the minutes, which is a huge improvement from where we were pre-pandemic. And I hope that does stay, so that I don't have to run down to somebody else's office just to find out that they don't keep good minutes.
Right.
But yes, I mean, in a perfect world, it does tell you those things. And in addition to the complaints that you may have about a neighbor or something, it also tells you, well, we have our roof that needs to be inspected next year. We have a boiler problem. There's a possible assessment for increase in taxes, whatever the case may be.
Okay, that makes sense. And then this is kind of a nice segue. The one thing we didn't talk about was the contract per se. And what are you seeing in this market now? Last year, when it was definitely a buyer's market, you could have a mortgage contingency, meaning that the deal is contingent that I can get a mortgage. We had a funding contingency. The deal is contingent I have a job up to the day of the closing. Sometimes even in resales, there was, seller concessions paying the mansion tax, that kind of thing. What are you seeing now in this current market?
In the current market, I have seen some deals that the seller is saying that there's such high demand and such hot property that they do require a cash buyer or a waiver of the mortgage contingency. If that's the case, I really sit down and explain to my client what this means, because it really is putting a lot of money at risk. I mean, basically, the whole reason why you put down 10% when you sign a contract is because you have to have some skin in the game. If you only put down $2,500 on an apartment and something goes wrong, you're going to walk away from that $2,500. It's a lot harder to walk away when you're putting down 10%, 80,000, 100,000, 250,000, so on. It's a lot harder to walk away from that money. As far as the contracts go, for a while, we did have a very elaborate COVID clause. If the closing gets delayed because of COVID, all these kind of things, if the building won't allow move-ins, but most attorneys now are paring them down. As far as financing contingencies, my deals are coming through, still have financing contingencies.
I see that as well. And then kind of going back about timing wise, right? So, and it was one of the first things that you mentioned. And again, a quick timeline for everybody is that when you see a property and you have an accepted offer and bring an attorney like Eiden on the project, it usually takes about 2 weeks for a contract to get signed, sometimes a week and a half. And that really, honestly, is on the buyer's attorney is communicating with the managing agent, which is generally always, I always joke that sector is underpaid and overworked, and even more so on it now. And then from, signed contract to getting a mortgage commitment letter is another 45 days. And then you submit the package to the board, that's 30 days. So we just kind of covered so about 90 days there is what I usually tell people. But now you're saying managing agents, as opposed to after board approval closing a week or two later, the outlay is much longer.
Correct. So basically, with these contracts, everybody's in a rush to sign it. I know present company excluded, of course, there are some brokers who like to press to get contracts signed very, very quickly. I've seen a few instances recently where, well, this is a very hot property, and if you don't sign within 5 days, we're going to move on to our backup offer. Don't take that. Don't accept that. It's not true. And more importantly, it's not possible. As Martin alluded to, a lot of the due diligence that I have to, or that your attorney will have to communicate with the managing agent for, is taking longer. And it's just because everybody's overworked. It's because everybody's overbooked. I just had a closing that we tried to schedule on Monday. So Monday was the 17th. We could get was June 9th from the managing agent.
Wow.
So we have board approval, we have bank approval, everybody's ready to go, but the managing agent, the earliest, and they're one of the bigger players in the game. It's not like this is a small rinky-dink managing agent. And I think it goes to your point that everybody's overworked. Yes, I would prepare for 75 to 90 days if you have a funding contingency.
Got it.
A condo will be closer to 45 to 60.
Okay, that makes sense. So what other tips or suggestions do you have for just buyers in general out there, first time or seasoned, or what has changed over the last couple of years, or that type of thing?
Well, I guess, I think we already touched on a couple of them. One is having the right attorney. And when I say the right attorney, not only do you need someone who knows what they're doing and is going to be particular with their due diligence, especially in the current environment. As I mentioned, the financials, you have commercial space, on the first floor, you want to make sure that they're current, that they're not at the risk of going out of business. And then that rent is going to be lost income for the building, stuff like that. So not only do you want an attorney who's going to do thorough due diligence, but you want to find a good attorney who's right for you. I am a sole practitioner. I'm proud of the business I have built. You guys know my work, but there are other people out there who want the bigger field. They want a paralegal, an associate, and a partner. So when the paralegal doesn't return their call at 3 o'clock, they can call the associate at 3:05. And when the associate doesn't answer, they can call the partner at 3:15 and yell and scream at people. You're going to get personal service with me. But again, it's about finding the right fit for the purchaser. As far as everything else goes, plan ahead, get your pre-approval in place. I'm sure the mortgage brokers spoke all about pre-approval last week, and it's best to speak to a professional mortgage person about getting pre-approvals. And again, make your plans accordingly. Do not expect to close in 45 days. So if you're going to, if you have to be out of your apartment at the end of June, you better start talking to your landlord now about extending that through at least August.
Very good point. Very good point.
If you're looking to move in September, start looking now, because it's going to take about 3 months to get through the whole process.
Fair enough. All that stuff has been great, Gary. So, I think, usually it's a half an hour show, but we've covered most of the stuff in 22 minutes. And to be honest, I got an urgent call that came in during this show. So if there's anything, do you have any closing thoughts or anything for us, Gary?
No, I mean, thank you for having me. I do enjoy getting on this and just kind of hearing myself talk for 22 minutes. No, I think we touched on the big things, really. Make sure you have the right attorney, make sure you find the right apartment, start planning ahead, get your pre-approvals in place. And I think those are really the big points right now. It is, I was just doing some reading, and, all the numbers are up in the last couple of months, except for inventory, which is coming way down. So yes, you can expect some bidding wars here and there, and you can expect prices to start slowly creeping up. But welcome to New York City real estate.
Right. Fair enough. Well, thank you so much, Gary. I really appreciate it. You're always insightful and come right to the point and everything. Everybody, thank you again for joining today. Ask the Expert with Martin Eiden. What is my name again? Martin Eiden team. And just hold on, Gary, until we get off, and we'll talk for a minute.